Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiffany. If you're new here, a few weeks ago, I came back from a solo trip to Italy and I see people commenting all the time, oh, I could never go solo, or I'd want to go solo travel, but I've never done it before. I'm not really sure where to start. So if this has ever been you, and for whatever reason it is that you haven't gone on a solo trip, these are going to be my tips for taking your very first solo trip. These tips come from my years of solo travel. I almost exclusively travel by myself with a few exceptions. The very first thing I'm going to suggest to you is to practice solo travel. And you must be thinking, what do you mean? How do I practice it if I've never done it before and I want to prepare to go? What I mean is to practice doing things in your hometown by yourself. Because a lot of us, we don't even do things in our own cities by ourselves. We don't go out to eat. We don't go to the movies. We don't go to museums. We don't do anything by ourselves. Now, I lived in New York City for 7 years, and I happened to do a lot of things there by myself. It was something that I found I really enjoyed, and that probably gave me a lot of confidence to do this. Go to dinner by yourself, go out to the movies by yourself, go to a museum by yourself. Get comfortable being alone. Trust me, this is gonna help you more than probably the rest of the tips that I have to give you, because it's gonna give you the prep that you need of feeling alone and how you handle that feeling. The second tip I have is to plan ahead. And I don't just mean, oh, I'm gonna go to Paris, I'm gonna go to the Eiffel Tower, I'm gonna go to the Louvre. I mean, plan ahead like how you're gonna get to the airport. How are you gonna get from the airport in the city that you're going to your hotel? Plan how you're gonna get to all of those sites, and don't do it once you get there, because that's gonna give you more anxiety and you're gonna have no one to rely on but yourself at that point. And so it's best to sort of have an idea of how public transportation works, or is my hotel within walking distance of the things that I want to see. I have failed on this. I will be totally honest with you. The very first time that I traveled solo that wasn't involved for work, that was an international trip, I had to go to Brussels, Belgium. I was actually going for a work conference. And I thought, oh, this will be fine. Brussels is small. I'm just gonna get to the airport and I'll figure out how to get to my hotel from there. Well, I was not prepared, and I just didn't think about the fact that it is not a mainly English-speaking country, right? They actually have 2 languages that they speak, and of course, I speak nothing of either one of those. And so I suddenly became frightened with fear of not being able to communicate with the people to try to figure out how to get from the airport to close to my hotel. I did eventually obviously figure it out, but that was very nerve-wracking. And then for the rest of the trip, I didn't really enjoy it, and I didn't really speak to anyone because I was afraid. And I kind of set myself up for failure because I didn't plan that one step of my trip. The other thing I think a lot of people worry about is safety, and it's a legitimate concern. However, I do think it's a legitimate concern no matter what you're doing, whether you're at home or you're abroad. So just general tips that I would give to anyone going out in a city, either in their own place or in another country or in another state. Be aware of your surroundings and don't be looking at your phone. If you're walking somewhere in a city that you're not familiar with, don't have ear pods in, don't be listening to music, because a lot of times what happens is people see you and they see that you're lost, maybe not lost, but you look lost, and you're not paying attention, and that makes you an easy target. Some other things that I recommend is if you're staying in a hotel and you're by yourself, you make sure that nobody except the person at the front desk knows your room number. And if for some reason that gets out, you need to go down and say, hey, I'm not comfortable. Is there any way that I can switch rooms? Also, never answer the door in your hotel room if you don't expect someone to be coming to the door. If someone knocks on your door and says, housekeeping, you can go and say, I wasn't expecting you, hold on. And that's when you go down and you call the front desk before you open that door. Another thing that I sort of practice is not staying out super late at night in a city, particularly if it's one that I'm not familiar with, because I don't necessarily know all of the good neighborhoods and the bad neighborhoods in a new city. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't go out at night at all. Definitely go out, have dinner, but don't stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning. It's just not a good idea to do that. Like, you're just potentially setting yourself up to have something bad happen to you. Now, if you're saying, okay, this is all great and I'm ready to do this, but I'm afraid I'm going to be lonely. So there are a couple of things that you can do, and one is to stay somewhere social, and that may mean staying in a hostel. And if you don't want to share a room, don't worry. A lot of hostels have private rooms in them, but the people that are staying there are also of the same mind. They want to meet new people, so if you go and hang out in the common areas, then you might make friends with some of those people, and then you might have somebody to do something with, or you come back in the evening and you're like, hey, do you want to go get food with me? The other thing is a lot of these hostels have kitchens in them, so it's great if you're trying to save a little bit of money, you can go down there and cook for yourself. If you still don't want to stay in a hostel, I recommend picking a hotel with either a restaurant or a bar in it, because even if you don't necessarily talk to everyone, you can at least go down there and feel like you're with other people without having to leave your hotel. And it will give you a place to sort of hang out without having to be by yourself in your hotel room. The next thing that I recommend, especially for this lonely part, is that you take a tour. Now, some people are probably saying, but if you take a tour, aren't you no longer solo traveling? Well, I kind of disagree. You got there by yourself, right? I think that's a lot for a lot of people. And a tour doesn't mean you have to hang out with these people for 7 days doing everything with them. A tour can be you went on a day tour with someone, you went on a food walking tour, you went on, a lot of cities have free tours. Maybe you did an activity with people at the hostel, but it's a really great way to say, hey, I'm gonna do this part by myself, but then when I get there, I'm going to do this other stuff. And maybe going on a week-long group tour is how you're like, okay, I definitely wanna go by myself next time, and I've practiced going away somewhere by myself. And I got there and I got back and everything was fine. The one big con of traveling solo is it's more expensive to travel by yourself than it is with another person. And that's because usually if you're going with someone, you are splitting the cost of a room. You probably splitting the cost of a taxi or things of that nature. And so it does make it a little more expensive, not a lot, I would say, to go by yourself. Another thing I recommend that you have for solo travel are some apps. And you're like, but I have all these apps on my phone already. Well, and some of these you probably already have. You probably already have Google Maps. So that's a really great one. You want to go on there, you want to download the offline map. So that way, if you don't have service, if you didn't get a local SIM card, you can just go and say, okay, I know I can walk from here to here because I already have it and I don't need directions. If you're going to a foreign country, make sure you have Google Translate. If you're going somewhere where you're going to take public transportation, check to see if they have an app for their public transportation system. So that way you can either buy your ticket, you can find out, hey, how close can I get on this bus to this place? It's just going to give you that extra security feeling of I know how to get from point A to point B. Then you're going to want to make sure that you have any other apps that you might need, let's say for your home banking, to make sure that they know that you're traveling, you know how much money you have in your account. So do some research on what you think is going to be useful for you in that country. Another app I recommend, particularly if you're going to maybe go country hopping, is something called Rome to Rio. And it will tell you how to get from Athens to Paris like 5 different ways. So, and it'll give you all your different options. So if you're just going to make that initial booking to get to your first destination, and then you're gonna get there and decide how long you're gonna spend there, then you know, okay, I can go to Rome to Rio and I can look it up and see. The other app, obviously, you wanna download is any airlines that you're going to be flying. This way you can keep track of your flights. You can decide, hey, I need to book a different ticket. Those are all things that are really useful to have, and you don't have to have a computer necessarily to do it. My last tip is to be confident. And trust me, if you've practiced, if you've planned ahead, and you have all these apps at your disposal, you will be confident. If you're confident, you're going to feel more comfortable with the trip. You're going to feel more comfortable. People are going to feel more comfortable around you. And that way you don't attract the I'm a tourist and I'm lost and I don't know what I'm doing kind of attention. You can do this, and you may do it, and you may decide that this is the best thing that you've ever done in your life and you're ready to travel solo around the world. I highly recommend it. I love being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it on my own schedule. So if I want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and go for a hike, then I can. And if I want to come back to my room at 8 o'clock in the evening and binge watch television because I'm tired from walking the bajillion miles that I've walked that day, then I can do that, and no one else is going to be disappointed. I hope you guys found some of these tips helpful, and I have lots more solo travel videos coming for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.